Um, Welcome, everybody. My name is Rob Byrne, a licensed New York State home inspector. We are a family-owned and operated business, me and my son, and we have a bunch of other guys that work with us. So we've been doing this for over 20 years. At the end, if AJ will remind me, I'll put a QR code up that you can get to me directly. If you need, you can shoot me a text or whatever. Always here to help our fellow inspectors. So tonight we're going to be talking about safe practices for the home inspectors. What I was thinking about was, with a lot of these courses and classes we're doing, we're really doing it for the client. In other words, plumbing, electric, gathering information and giving it to the client. This class tonight, really doing it for yourselves out in the field, because it's, how you practice your inspections safely and, no events. But really, this class is geared, for everybody that's a home inspector, more so than, you obviously got to keep your clients safe and things like that. But this is basically more of a, an us type of class where you're going to learn and discuss certain safety practices. And, by all means, if, as we're doing the class, anybody has some ideas that we didn't highlight on, just, drop them in the Q&A or however AJ wants you to communicate with him. And let's share some of your safe practice thoughts and ideas. And actually, AJ, what I was thinking of is, at the end, if we have time, I made a huge list of things that I'd like to talk to all the inspectors about that we implement, and I've learned throughout the years from other fellow inspectors. We were very fortunate to have a lot of good mentors as we were going through this industry and growing it. So yeah, so what we, talking about safe practices, we always go out as a 2 inspection team. So that in itself lends itself out for safety for multitude of reasons. But I'll talk about that at the end once we get through all of our slides and stuff and share some thoughts and ideas that we do that hopefully you guys and girls can implement on yours. So let's get started. Safe practices for us as home inspectors. Again, this is exactly what we're talking about, self-employed home inspectors. So we're really doing this course for ourselves to understand how to get through an inspection safely, as we talked about a little bit earlier. OSHA rules, we should be familiar with them as a good source of safety guidelines. But really what it comes down to a lot is common sense, not getting yourself into situations where you're unsafe, which we'll talk about as we go through the course and the slides. So that's a good way of learning safety procedures from OSHA. If you walk a roof or you do things a little differently, you can always follow their procedures. Not a bad idea. Signage. InterNACHI has a bunch of these signs. A lot of times you go up in an attic and you turn around and the client's climbing up the ladder, following you up. You don't really want that situation, because if they get hurt, it becomes a big problem. We always talk to our clients and tell them what we're doing, and it's not safe to come on a roof or go in an attic or anything like that. So we like them to keep them on the ground. So when you talk to your clients the night before you do the inspection or during the inspection, just lay the groundwork with them. You don't want them climbing up on your ladder and doing all that kind of stuff with that. And obviously the slide next to it, if you're in a crawl space, these are things you got to look out for. Flash a light in there before you get up there in case there's any live wires hanging down you might not see, and as you're crawling around, it hits you in the back or catches you as you're moving along. So always analyze the spaces that you're going in throughout the day. Standards of practice. If you follow the InterNACHI SOPs, these are some of the items that we go through on the inspection. And we'll talk about a few of them because I think they make sense with what we do. So the inspector is not required to operate any systems that are shut down. That's pretty much common sense. If a system's shut down, it might be shut down because there's a problem and no one's there to tell you why it's shut down. But if it's shut off, do not turn it on. If for some reason, you have to turn it on, always get permission from the homeowner and verify that approval that you can do it. What we usually do is we have either the agent or somebody text us saying, hey, yes, it's okay to, turn on the emergency switch for the boiler, because a lot of people shut it down for the summertime for some reason. But anything like that, where you're going to turn something on and you're given permission and you find it safe and they say, oh yeah, it's safe, we shut it down for the winter, then document it somehow, have them text it to you that you have, written documentation that they're allowing you to do it. Shut off valves, manual stops, anything underneath the sinks and the toilets, don't turn those valves on and off, because if you turn them and they snap off, you're going to have problems. You're never going to operate a gas valve. Never going to operate gas valves or anything like that. You're not going to light a pilot, turn things onto the on position, anything of that nature. The electrical disconnects and overcurrent protections, same thing. You're not required to turn electrical disconnects on and off. It's just not a good idea to do it. Yep, just what we talked about. They could be off because the circuit's not safe, and if you turn it on, it's just, again, this is common sense. If something's off, leave it off. If for some reason you have to check it or test it, then just get permission. It's that simple. Active short circuit can cause a fire, energize a component that you might not be aware of. An electrical shock or electrocution can happen. Operating system that does not function properly may damage the system. So again, if it's off, it might be off because it's not working. So again, you're just going to leave it in the off position unless you feel you have to turn it on, then get permission and make sure it's safe to do so. Okay, what we're not required to do, enter or access any area that may, in the opinion of the inspector, be unsafe. Crawl spaces, areas that are unsafe and not readily accessible. We talked about that. If you are going to go into a crawl space, just survey it before you get in there. Make sure there's no water or wires hanging or rodents. Same thing with attics. A lot of times you'll go up into the attic and sometimes you see a pair of eyes staring at you when you stick your head in the hatch. We always kind of bang on the attic access going up to just kind of scare them away. And if they're up there, when you slide that hatch back, hopefully you scare them away, but you'll know because you'll smell it, you'll see it. So at that point, it's not safe to enter. Inspect underground items such as irrigation system, underground storage tanks, anything abandoned, stuff like that. Do anything which, in the inspector's opinion, is likely to be unsafe or dangerous to the inspector or others. But not limited to walking on a roof, climbing ladders, entering attic spaces, and pets. We'll get into a lot of these slides in more detail, but if you're going to walk on a roof, just know the procedures and the safety. When we talk later on tonight, after we go through the slides, I got a bunch of tips if you walk on a roof with ladders and stuff like that we could talk about. Walk on any surface, walk on any roof area that appears and be inspected to be unsafe. Again, survey, I'm going to say it 1,000 times tonight, survey the situation. If it looks like the roof is, sagging or dipping. Maybe you want to pop your head up in the attic before you go on the roof and make sure there's plywood. You don't want to be going on a roof where we see plenty of roofs. Sometimes they just roof over it and the plywood is so deteriorated that if you stepped on it, you would just go through it. So again, you just got to be careful. If windows and doors and stuff flashing, if not accessible from the ground, just think about it. You start setting up a ladder to look at it. It's all up to you. You want to, but you want to be safe. It's not required for us to do it. Common sense 3.7, insert any tools, probes, or devices into the main panel. Common sense, open electrical systems that are shut down. We spoke about that already. Activating the electrical system of branch circuit. We talked about that. Limitations of the home inspection. These are some of the things. It always comes up. If we follow the standards of practice exactly the way it's written, and then we do something else that we're exceeding the practice, the standards of practice. But that's up to you as the inspector to go ahead and I think we all go above and beyond the standards of practice, but the standards of practice are there for the bare minimum. If you're going out there and you're doing the bare minimum as a home inspector, I don't think it's the right idea. I think you have to go above and beyond with that. Every inspector must at least substantially meet InterNACHI standards of practice. And again, when you send out your pre-inspection agreement, you're going to put a copy of the SOP in there so people understand what you're doing and what you're not doing. I always suggest to my clients to, kind of glance through that with the pre-inspection agreement and sign it with that. It's funny. I'm mentioning the pre-inspection agreement. We're talking about safety. I know in New York State, as a licensed state, and I'm not sure how it works throughout the country, but I'm pretty sure that, from your insurance company, at the very least, you have to get a signed pre-inspection agreement. Obviously, it's for your safety, your mental safety, that you don't want to start getting lawsuits and stuff like that, and people calling up and saying you didn't do this or you didn't do that. So it's good to set the client's expectations right off the bat. If you're not sure about something, just like we said before, go a little above and beyond the standards so people can see you're doing your job. People know when you're doing your job. They know when you're doing your bare minimum. Clearly, if you were going to go into a crawl space and it was a dangerous situation, you would show it to your client and explain to them why you're not going in there. And once it's in the report, they already saw it. You talked about it. It's not the first time. So again, you got contractual obligations, standards of practice, and the pre-inspection agreements. Duty of care for extra tasks. Once an inspector voluntarily takes on an additional task beyond the SOP, they are legally obligated to perform those tasks with reasonable care. So if you're going above and beyond on certain things, you're going to pretty much do that all along. It's not going to be an invasive, you're not going to start dismantling things and really getting into it. You take the cover off the boiler, or, the cover off the electrical panel. That's part of the inspection. Again, it's still visual. So that's important to understand that that's part of what we do. Okay, I'm a little ahead of the slides, but I'll try to stay on point so you guys can read along. Inspectors sometimes ask about the potential legal consequences. We talked about this with the pre-inspection agreement. If an inspector consistently goes far beyond the SOP requires, a client might successfully argue that the inspector voluntarily assumed a duty greater than. We just talked about that. We talked about a couple examples. So sometimes you have to take the covers off of things to get the data. So that's part of it. So sometimes it's a little bit of a gray area, but just do your job. Let people see you're going above and beyond for pretty much everything. And I think that's the important part. Again, to avoid lawsuits, clearly joining InterNACHI is tremendously helpful for the fact that, education, just like everybody's here tonight, learning, sharing thoughts and processes that we go through during the inspection. So that's important. You can incorporate, that you would talk to your lawyer, your accountant, to see how you'd go about that. If start out when you're on InterNACHI for your CPI certification, that's important. That gives you some credentials when you're out in the field as a CPI, the Certified Professional Inspector. Hopefully everybody's working towards that. Never refer to yourself as an expert. Yep, that's clearly understood. If, for example, like myself, I have a background in engineering, electrical and mechanical, but I don't go in as an electrical or mechanical engineer. We're going in as the home inspector. So no, you can talk to your client, you can go above and beyond what you're doing in conversation and say, hey, by the way, this is not a bad idea if you're changing your old heating system. You talk about the combi systems, the on-demand. You can get into a little more detail with them, but if you're knowledgeable, and again, you'll learn all of that from a lot of the courses and work you do. Share that knowledge with your client. If you get a hire help, use a contract. Turn away some customers. I like that number 6. Sometimes when you're on a phone with a client, you can tell right off the bat that it's going to be trouble. So sometimes it's, I'm talking about safe practices, safer to not deal with that client, because the handwriting's kind of on the wall with the conversation. If you folks out there that are home inspectors don't jump on a call before you get out into the field, you're making a big mistake. You can really, understand people in the conversation on the phone, get to know them, see what they're about with the questions they ask. I think that's really important. Hopefully everybody does that. Whether if they call you as because somebody recommended you, or you're getting a text, definitely jump on the phone. Again, we talked about it, the pre-inspection agreement, paramount. Check your insurance company. Hopefully everybody carries E&O insurance. You can research that through InterNACHI as well. They have their E&O insurance that you can get through them. Definitely check it out. Use warning signs. That's what we were talking about with the ladder, with the signs on the ladder. Take 3 photos of the water meter. You do, before. You'll see it, and then at 3 pictures, there's a time lapse. So if you take 3 pictures and the needle didn't move, give it 30 seconds. It's date stamped. You'll see that it's not moving. Just kind of to reassure that. Also, what we like to do is after the inspection, whoever opened the house up for us, we like to just kind of walk through them, show them all the lights in the basement are off, the panel covers back on, just like a quick 5-minute walk through, show them that the hatch to the attic was closed, the crawl space, all of that stuff. Thermostats, that's a big thing. Thermostats, a lot of times people will forget to lower the heat, and people come home and the heat's cranked up. Take a picture of that to show that it was turned, back to the position it was on. Again, a before and after picture, so you can see. Yep. Write your reports. Your reports are paramount to write it the right way. You can use the InterNACHI library and narratives that'll help you explain things. If you want to put an estimated life expectancy chart with your report, you can. Things change so regularly that might be difficult, but it's something you can offer. Then you also, now that we've had a home inspection maintenance book, you give that to your clients. Get a survey. Number 14, if you settle a dispute with a client, get a signed release, which means that if you made a settlement, let that client, before the settlement is finished, let them sign a release stating that, whatever you did, it's corrected, however it be, with fixing it or a payout or something like that. Just get that signed release. This way it can never come back and come up again as a conversation. We'll save that video for later. If we have time at the end, we'll show some videos. Apparel, clothing. Up here in the Northeast, starting to get, real cold. Just make sure you have the proper shoes, boots, pants, reindeer, kind of common sense. Again, logos, that's good to wear as you're going through your inspection, or you could see this guy, electrical and plumbing services. Like that. Where'd you guys find that, AJ? Good stuff. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into some personal protection equipment. Going in an attic or a crawl space, you always want to make sure you're got the proper protection with PPE equipment. So this is just some stuff that you would wear in a crawl space or an attic or any place that, might be mold, that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward. The picture on the upper right-hand side is a picture of a crawl space with contaminated insulation. If you're in that crawl space, you do not want to not have the proper PPE equipment on. So make sure you gear up: hats, gloves, goggles, respirators, Tyvek suits, boots. Take everything off, put it in a bag, and if it's, just not washable, just toss it out. Some of the things that you might come across in an attic or even in a crawl space. This is raccoon dropping. You can see the middle picture with kind of getting an idea. That's a AA battery, what it looks like. So you want to protect yourself from these various things that you can come across in a crawl space or an attic. There's so many different viruses and sicknesses you can get from animal droppings. A lot of times we go in the attic and we'll see birds nesting by the gable vents that were torn. Stated that's a biohazard. Anything with animals in the house and things like that, those are biohazards. State it in the report and let your clients know that you don't want somebody just going up there and cleaning it and making it become airborne and all that kind of stuff. So you want it done by a qualified professional to be able to not contaminate the house throughout the process. We think the next one is signage. Yep, we talked about a little bit early. So that picture on the right, same thing. If you got an open hatch to a crawl space, you want to kind of make sure that nobody walks there inadvertently and falls in. You hear horror stories all the time. Block it off, put cones on it, put something. But these signs are great. I mean, it clearly you're doing your job to protect the clients. They see that sign. Make sure you take a picture of that sign before you go down, so it's documented. You don't have to put it in your report, but you'll have it. God forbid something happens to somebody along the way. You say, "Hey, I had a sign up. Why didn't you pay attention to it?" So all these little things help as you go along. It's really not a bad idea for those signs. And then the other thing we have here on these pictures, you set up your tools. You have all your electrical testers, a whole bunch of stuff. You could wear a vest to have the stuff readily available. The picture in the middle is a picture of somebody that clearly is inspecting roofs. I believe they're called tiger paws. You can get them. You can strap them onto your shoe. It helps grip the roof a lot better. So if you're walking a roof, that's always helpful. if you, like anybody like me, you always leave your GFCI testers around the house. You forget to take them. A lot of folks put it on like a keychain and they keep it on that tool vest or vest and just kind of pull it out and just do your thing, take your pictures and just let it go and it stays with you. Um, sure we've all lost a lot of tools throughout the time. We're talking about lost tools. We were talking about attic and crawl spaces. When you're up in those areas, just take the tools that you need with you. Don't take your whole, like if you wear a tool belt or even a vest like that or anything, you're going to lose it because the stuff is going to fall out of your pocket because you're not standing up anymore. You're crawling around. So just take up what you need. Of course, flashlight, your camera and stuff like that. Also, make sure you have a backup because you don't want to be in the attic and go all the way down to the far side of the attic if you're able to walk it, or same thing in a crawl space, you're all the way down at the far side and your flashlight dies or something happens. You need a backup. So I think that's really, really important to have redundancy when you're getting into these spaces where, you don't want to have to go back out to get your flashlight, or even more important, it's too dark, you can't see. So I think that's really important to talk about, have redundancy, especially with lighting and stuff like that. So when you're going into crawl spaces, or attics, that type of thing. Also, always let people know when you're going into a space like that. For us, we go out with a 2 inspection team. It's simple. I'll reference, we carry walkie-talkies, which communicating with your team is really important. If you're going out as a 2 inspection team, you can communicate. I can't begin to tell you how many times my son Christopher was upstairs and he's running water and I'm downstairs. And if you're running the water upstairs and it's leaking downstairs considerably, you'll flood the place out. So depending on how you go about your procedure, or if you go down, but inadvertently when you're running water or it just over time starts to leak, you'd have to shut it off. So that's important for your safety. Just communicate, and as as a one inspect the person, you're going to be running up and down quite often. But again, going back to what we were talking about with the confined spaces, let the agent know, let your client know, say, hey, I'm going into crawl space, just want to let you know I should be out in whatever 5-10 minutes. I joke around, and if I say, hey, if I'm not out in 5 to 10 minutes, just call the cops or something like that. But seriously, if you're doing, let people know. Don't just walk away and then go into a crawl space and people have no idea where you are, and God forbid something happens to you, half an hour later, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, they went into the crawl space. Always let people know where you're going, as a heads up. We talked about this, some of the InterNACHI materials. Now that you've had a home inspection is good as a maintenance guide for our clients. Avoid common back injuries. Obviously, the way you lift things up and how you do it, just go about it the right way, bend at the knees. Everybody should know that, just to keep yourself safe. What we're going to do is, again, we're going to save the videos for the end because some of them are quite long, so we can kind of scroll through them. If we have time at the end, we'll just kind of pop these up on it. But that's good. What is a ladder? A ladder is an appliance designed for climbing, which consists of 2 sides, rails joined at uniform intervals, etc. It could be a step ladder. It could be an extension ladder. It could be, an A-frame ladder, and anything like that is a ladder. Always make sure the ladders are safe, not deteriorated, damaged, bent, twisted, rotted, anything like that. Just your equipment, maintain it, make sure everything's good. These telescopic ladders on the right are really good. I personally do not like these telescopic ladders on the right. If you're climbing the roof, I'd rather use an extension ladder or like the little giant that opens up for a couple of reasons. The other ones are a lot more sturdy, but these telescopic ladders, the ladders, when you put them up, the rails are rounded. So you don't have as much surface area on a gutter or any place you're resting it on. So it has a tendency to slide, where if you look at the ladder on the left, it's more squared up. You have more surface area if you're resting it on a gutter or such. It's just designed better. I know people that use the telescopic one. Just be careful. Again, because the rails are rounded, doesn't have as much surface area. Also, as you go up the ladder, if you are climbing the roof, put that ladder up against the gutter, find out where that nail is for the gutter, and tie off your ladder to that. It's real helpful that if you're stepping off the ladder and you push it, you don't want it to slide on you. So that's important. And if you're out by yourself and you're going up the ladder and you got your client or the realtor or anybody, just ask them to put their feet on the bottom of the ladder. They're not going to mind. Sometimes, if we're not really by ourselves, but I know folks that will take like a giant planter that's heavy and kind of slide it to it. So it kind of helps it. But just be careful where you're mounting your ladder. You don't want to put it on a deck where where it can slide or any wet surfaces. But if you're setting up a ladder, and you want somebody to foot it, most people don't mind. And you go up about it that way. And just, again, whatever's safest, make sure the feet are required, are not broken on these extension ladders. Check them, make sure that the rubber on the bottom's not ripped and deteriorated and not in good shape. Just make sure the ladder is stable and safe as you go up. Ladder sizing, this gets into a lot more detail. With a 16-foot ladder, you can go roughly 13 feet, a 24-foot ladder, etc. Different types of ladders, ratings for what they're for, and then, of course, the maximum weight limit. So all of these, everything that we're looking at on the slides and all this content on what everybody's watching is on the InterNACHI website. This is a course that is in the library that you can work towards your CPI. Highly recommend it. There's a bunch of videos in there. Spend some time watching them. Great videos. If we get a chance later on at the end and we're done with our slides, we'll definitely look at some of them. Inspecting the ladder, we talked about knowing what the limits are. If the ladder is not good, you put signs on it, just disregard it, throw it out if it's not safe. These are OSHA regulations. If you're going to work in an environment that's governed by OSHA, you have to follow that. Setting up a ladder and using it. Obviously, you want to be 3 feet above the point of contact. So obviously the image on the left is what you want to do. You don't want the ladder to be short, because then it's way difficult to navigate it, and it's dangerous. The chart on the right, it shows you if you're up 24 feet, you're going to be approximately 6 feet from the wall. Again, a lot of times when you set the ladder up, you'll have a good idea on the angle and what's safe. You don't want it to be too steep, because then it can slide out. You don't want it to be too straight up and down, because as you go up higher, you can tip backwards. So a lot of common sense, knowing how to use the ladders. If you've never used a ladder, practice. Take a ladder out, rest it on the garage of your house, whatever. Just be familiar with it. Here they're showing you always have 3 points of contact when you're going up a ladder. Don't go up a ladder carrying your tools and a phone in your hand. Keep your hands free all the time, because you're going to have 3 points of contact. At some point, you could have your 2 hands and 1 foot, then 2 feet and one of your hands. So you got to make sure you got that 3 point of contact, and take your time. Don't rush. There's no rush, hurrying around. That's when you get hurt. doing that, just again, take your time. Let's see what we got next. Okay. Oh, again, survey your surroundings when you're doing an inspection. You know, for some reason, if you're putting a ladder up against a house, to check something and it's a metal ladder, just look for the electrical lines. Make sure they're not anywhere near the ladder that you're working on. Yeah, it's just again, a lot of this is common sense. Just know what you're doing when you're putting up a ladder. If it's windy out, you know, just be careful. If you, I don't know why, you know, if you can't get up on a ladder because it's windy and you normally walk the roof, just document it. Again, put it in your report writing. Unable to walk the roof because of windy conditions, wet conditions, snow, ice, anything like that. Just state the fact of why you're not doing it, and then you can always, you know, put it in your report and take some pictures, as well as, you know, obviously explain that to your client. If you do that, then make sure that you're you know, you're safe. Again, the ladders, electrical lines, you should never leave a ladder unattended. We talked about that. Signage, ladders. You got to be trained on how to use it, with it, but it's not required that you go on a ladder. Just so everybody knows. You know, you're not required to walk a roof. You're not required to fly a drone, but you are required to inspect that roof, and you have to explain how you inspected it, or pretty much any system in a house, how you inspected it, in your report. So again, documented it. Like, you're not required to have a ladder. So everybody understands that you could do an inspection from the ground, without a ladder. Roof inspections. Same thing. We can jump back on some of them. A lot of videos. We'd never get through the materials. So we'll double back on these later. Walking on a concrete tile roof. I don't know why you would, but if you did, there's a whole procedure on doing it. Slate roofs. I don't know any reason why you would. I'm not going to create damage, but yeah, those are the tiger paws that we're talking about. Inspecting roofs and risk factors just kind of led into that slide nicely. Slate roof on the bottom left. Why you would want to walk that is beyond me, but I know licensed roofers don't even like to do that. There's certain ways of doing it. Wood shingle roofs, you don't want to damage anything on your inspection. Obviously, a metal roof, you don't want to slide off and that kind of stuff. You can get really good binoculars. You can view it from the ground with high-powered binoculars. You can see a lot. I carry an old digital camera that has like a 40x zoom. And if I want to really zoom in on something for some reason, although we fly drone, we have all the bases covered. I'll just zoom in, and it's really on a 50x zoom. You really get to see what you want to do, and then just kind of slide that picture in your report, to show, chimney bricks that are missing and deterioration and that kind of stuff. It's always good when you take your pictures. Don't just take a general view of the picture. If you do, that's great, but then try to zoom in and really look close to show your client what exactly you're talking about in the report. So that's helpful when you're doing that. Gaining access to the roof, we were just talking about that. This is a good picture. If you look at the picture on the right, Look at the way that ladder's there. Something you definitely don't want to do. I don't know why you would even go on the roof from that side. It's bizarre. Um, yeah, so that's a good don't do. I don't know if you can see on my cursor the ladder, the way they got it set up, but that's no good. Again, if it's too high or too steep, just take pictures, zoom in, get your binoculars, get your camera that can zoom in on things and pick it up. That's basically how, you know, you got to figure out how you're going to get up, get on, inspect the roof. You don't have to get on it, is what I'm saying. Let's see what else. Again, more videos. We'll kind of double back on that. Really, the right way of walking on a roof is being tied down on a full arrest system with harnesses. This is, most houses don't have this, so I don't know how you'd go about it if you're going to walk the roof. You're not going to start putting these things on, but these are all ways that, you know, installers and stuff do, harnesses, belts, that kind of thing. Just be careful. Alternate ways of walking on the roof. Camera pole, drones. These are all good pictures of folks using different applications of inspecting the roof, putting up a pole. You could see the third picture in, they got the camera on video, they're controlling it from their phone on the handle. Yeah, all good stuff. Definitely look into this equipment. If you're gonna get a flat roof and you can't get up there, you got to inspect it. If not, it becomes a limitation. And your client's paying you to inspect that roof. So again, back to that phone call prior to going on site, asking if they know roof access. We do a lot of inspections in the boroughs, Brooklyn and Queens, and you know, we got row houses 3 stories up, usually to have internal access from inside the building, and you can get up. But if not, you know, you're not going to be schlepping a ladder to go up 3 stories. Some areas you can't even fly a drone. So camera pole, you send it up there. You can take pictures, videos, that way. Drones, just make sure everybody knows that if you're going to use a drone, you should be licensed. Know the restrictions, know the local jurisdictions. Obviously, you can't fly drones near airports. It'll just won't even let you fly it if you're going through the procedure the right way with the drone software. So I would definitely know where you're flying your drone and what you can and can't do in that area. So that's drones. Especially in commercial inspections, getting up there. Those are always tall spots. Roof falls, safety videos. Maybe what I'll do is when we take our break, maybe we'll pop a few of the videos on when we're in certain sections, or if not, we can double back on it. Let's see what we got here. So that was roofs, ladders, and stuff. Now we're on the outside. We're talking about safety, asbestos, siding, shingles. They were made from cement, and they would put the asbestos fibers in it as like a binding agent for strength and durability. Again, this is on the outside. In the US, it was banned in the 70s due to health risks because of the asbestos. Our concern when we go to a house like this is to state the fact. Possible, again, use the word possible, asbestos containing materials, because you're not testing it, so you don't know for sure there's asbestos in there. So have the conversation with your client, share some knowledge on how things are done with asbestos. A lot of times we go to houses, they'll just side over it and it's encapsulated because it's behind there. So you could have these conversations. But again, be aware of the common issues with this type of siding, the cracking, the chipping, the deterioration, and the fact that it does have some asbestos in it. And if it's broken, handle it properly. Anytime you use that word asbestos, people kind of freak out, rightfully so. But realize that, me personally, it's on the outside. Some people don't like the fact that there's asbestos on their house. Just have the conversation with them, state the fact, and explain why the asbestos is in there as a binding agent, and share your knowledge. You can explain to them about that, why it's in there. So people are like, why do they put asbestos in there? Because of the fibers to make it more durable, and strength, add strength to it. Lead paint. That's obviously lead is a toxic metal that used to be used in paint, gasoline, and plumbing materials. The use of lead in new construction was banned in the US, but older homes may still have some of this, lead-based paint, which there's certain characteristics of it, as you can see in this picture. Again, there's training courses that you can understand what it's about. But anytime the paint is kind of brittle, and if it snaps in your hand like a potato chip, it's most likely lead. Again, when you're talking about these things with your client, use the word possible because you didn't test it. Sometimes the real estate agents, they're like, oh, how do you know that's lead? Well, I didn't say it was lead. It's possible. Then you have to test it. A lot of times attorneys will jump all over you if you put in, you state, although we know it's a fact, if you go down the basement and the old heating pipes have this white stuff wrapped around it that's disintegrating, and the house is 100 years old, 99% of the time it's going to be asbestos. But if you put asbestos in the report, sometimes attorneys will pick it up and they'll call you out on it and say, how do you know? Did you test it? No, but we know it is. So we always put possible, and then I'll have the conversation with my client and point it out that it's probably asbestos, but in the report it's going to say possible. And the only way you could be certain is by testing it. Some people do that. They do lead testing. You can incorporate that in your ancillaries if you do that and you're there and you have your equipment and you want to take some samples and test it and verify it. You could do that. We don't. We like to just stay in our lane and do what we do and recommend it out to an environmental specialist if somebody need that. Heating systems, obviously, when you're looking at the heating systems, you want to look for signs of deficiencies, like on the left, you have a picture of a flue that's disconnected in the attic. Clearly, that's a problem. When you are checking, boilers and stuff like that, you want to make sure that there's sufficient combustion air. If you're in a boiler room and it's sealed up pretty tight, but they don't have any combustion air coming in, you want to suggest that you get some form of combustion air coming in, so you're not using air within the house for your combustion and create carbon monoxide and all of that bad stuff. Guess we'll spend some time on these attic pictures. If you're up in an attic, again, we talked earlier about respirators, Tyvek suit, that kind of stuff. This is all loose fill insulation. So clearly you're not going to walk in this attic. But again, you can take a picture, put in your report as a limitation, unable to walk attic due to blown loose fill insulation. Also, when you're up in the attic and you're looking at some of this insulation, you want to be aware that it might be vermiculite, which was mined as an insulator, and it's been known to have bad stuff in it. So you'll look at that again, take pictures, and document it for that kind of stuff. Again, it's going to be possible, although if you see it, most likely it is. When you're up in the attic, you would never walk on things that you can't see underneath your feet, because you could have old knob and tube wiring up there. You could have things that you don't want to step on, because you're going to create a problem. And the middle picture, it's quite obvious that you're coming up and you have no flooring. So something like this, you would definitely call it out. Improper flooring, the technicians can't get to service those air handlers or anything like that. Plus, you don't want to start walking over these ceiling joists and possibly fall through and get hurt. And just kind of some wonkiness. You can see in the middle picture, the way they're supporting these things, it's kind of looks weird, but you're opening yourself up to getting hurt and creating problems and stuff like that. So it's important to be careful when you're walking around in the attic. Just you got to be safe. Wouldn't walk the attic if there's no flooring. There's really no reason to. But again, document it in the report, state the fact, take some good pictures, and move on. Obviously here too, same thing on the right, the flue is rusted pretty good. And you would call that out. You're missing a flue pipe on the left-hand side. I don't know if that's just being used for combustion air or what, but I'm not 100% sure with that. These are all up on the website, so you can look through it and see. But that's definitely a flue pipe that's rusted through. Gas-fired combustion appliances. When you're inspecting natural gas or propane, you're dealing with a gas, it's combustionable. It's used for furnaces, boilers, water heaters. The main hazard is related to the fuel source. You're piping as the gas, you're looking for leaks, joints, threads. Improper combustion can cause fires or carbon monoxide poisoning. Those are all the important things. The inspector shall verify the presence and condition of gas shutoff valves and proper ventilation. That's important. That's what we're looking at on these pictures. The gas shutoff valve on the upper right-hand side. If it has to be shut off, you can shut it off at that point. There should always be, in the picture here, you can see it's called a kill switch. If somebody's servicing the boiler, they want to be able to shut that switch off, in their area where nobody else can turn it on if it's not visible. Obviously, when you do an inspection, you should make sure that switch is in and around the boiler or furnace or any gas appliance. The picture on the upper left-hand side is a ejector pump, and you do get sewer gases out of there that that can become a problem, not only from the smell, but from the gases, could be combustible, and it's close to a water heater. You got a gas dryer on the right. This is not really the optimum place to have that, but people do it. You can reference it and call it out. If you see a gas appliance that you know is unsafe, or you smell gas, I think it's safe to say that if you had to shut off the kill switch because you don't want this going on, notify the people in the house immediately if you find gas. Put the sticker on there, and definitely be aware of that as you're doing your inspection. So when you're inspecting gas appliances, you want to make sure that the gas shutoff valves are there, combustion air, kill switches, not have an ejector pump in an area where there's combustibles, a lot of weird things. Is a lot of times, if you know it's unsafe, put a big red sticker on it somehow, some way. Just shut it down. Don't let it be operable. Sometimes we come across things when we're checking it out. We turn it on, we smell gas, we see things that are not right. Just shut it down and notify the homeowner or the agent or somebody. Take them down, show them what's going on. Anytime you come across a safety concern, it's our responsibility to notify the people. That's part of our code of ethics and standards of practice. It's important that if we see a dangerous situation, we have to call it out and let everybody aware of what's going on. So yeah, that's important. Then obviously this electric heater on the left, the cover's off. It's just a dangerous situation that you want to let not only your clients, your clients didn't buy the house yet, but the sellers and the agents, so they can take the proper precautions and actions. Gas-fired wall floor heater and oil-fired appliances. This one is they're common in older homes in mild climates. You'll see them along the wall. These things are old. They're usually neglected, leading it to unsafe operations. A lot of times these gas valves and shutoffs are not maintained. To create carbon monoxide, they're not as efficient as newer things today. If it's hot, you got to be careful that you don't get burnt. Some of these things get real hot. Floor heaters are less common, but share the same safety concerns than hot surfaces and potential for getting burned and stuff like that. So electrical heating systems, or if this is electrical heating systems. I don't know why this one's like this, but modern electrical systems are wired with circuit breakers. Right, you could have circuit breakers on it. You should always wear protective gear when you're taking on and off the panel covers. Let me see, this is electric heating systems. Okay, so we're still on this. All right. Just, be cautious if you're taking off the dead front cover panel on an electrical circuit breaker panel. Make sure you got safety goggles on, gloves, proper boots. A lot of times when you go into a house, if you don't put your booties on, you take your shoes off. But if your shoes are off and you're doing the inspection, when you get to the electrical panel, put your shoes on. Don't touch that electrical panel with these shoes off. Some people make that mistake. They're being, considerate, but I always tell everybody that my shoes are going to go on no matter what when I'm taking the panel cover off. So that's important to know when you're looking at electrical systems. a lot of times things are obvious. You'll see scorched outlets. You'll see things that are burnt or overheated. A lot of times, if it's a concern, you'll be able to see it visually on the various devices, switches, outlets, that kind of stuff. Again, this is PPE for electrical inspections. You have safety glasses, gloves. We talked about the boots. You always want to make sure you got them on when you're working on electrical stuff. Again, the most dangerous part of an inspection, you're dealing with live of an electrical inspection is it's understandable. Those I always tell people, electric can kill you. A plumbing leak, if water's dripping, nobody's gonna die from that. But electric, people can die, and you want to protect yourself whenever you are working on or around or near electric. Make sure there's no water on the floor. Again, survey the area, common sense, know these things. If you can't get there because there's water and it's unsafe, pictures, put it in your report, document it, and state the fact. Take a good picture so everybody can understand why you didn't do certain things. Eye injury, burns, flying debris. Yeah, you want to be careful when it comes to electric. This is a good thing to do when you're checking the electrical panel to make sure it's not live. You check it with your voltage tester to make sure that it's not live. You can use the back of your hand. You can touch the panel with the back of your hand. You'll feel it. But the most important thing is if you do it with the back of your hand, what will happen is your hand, if there's electric, it'll constrict and pull your hand away versus putting your hand on it and getting stuck to it. This is always a topic, a conversation. If you go to an electrical panel and you don't see, if you look at the picture on the bottom, you'll see that's the panel screw. The other one, sheetrock screws, pointed screws. Just be careful, because a lot of times when you're unscrewing it, it'll back itself out, and you can create a problem. So you want to be careful with those screws. Very dangerous. Okay, so inspecting, yeah, we talked about removing the dead front cover from the panel. Just make sure it's not live, and then when you start taking it off, you just have to be careful. But this picture here, if you're doing your electrical inspection, and you come across these Federal Pacific panels, you should not take the cover off on these, because they have a design flaw. When you take the cover off the panel, you can see the breakers fall out. You don't want to get into that situation. So again, state the fact that it's a Federal Pacific panel. You're not going to take the cover off because it's unsafe. Same thing on the bottom left, those multicolored panel, and this one here on the right, those are Zinsco panels. So you want to just document it. This one, I guess, just lifted up. They opened it. I'm not sure, but anytime you see those colorful breakers like the Zinsco and then the Federal Pacific on the right, anytime you see that orange breaker, just document it. Don't really get involved with that. We talked about tripping. Don't turn breakers on and off. If it's off, just leave it off. Document it's off. Ask why it's off. You could do a little investigation, but don't turn it on. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. Make sure when you're taking that cover off, you pay attention. You're careful with it, and yeah, just proceed with caution. I know some inspectors are not comfortable taking the cover off, and they just don't do it. They document it and they don't do it. You know, you can document anything, and then, you know, talk to your clients about it and say, I'm not taking the cover off for whatever reason. If it's a safety issue, then that's clearly easy to document. Inspecting the panel, the inside of the panel. Obviously, when you open it up, you want to look for various items that are safety concerns, double taps on the breakers, rusted breakers. You can see a lot of times we take the cover off and we find rodent droppings in there. We've taken the panel off a few times, and you'll find animals shorted across the bus bar, or, you know, electrified from walking around in the panel. We see that not often, but we've seen it. We've seen it a few times. Just improper wiring, you know, for safety, you're looking for aluminum wiring. I don't really want to get into, you know, like the electrical part of it, but those are the things when you take the cover off, you're going to be looking for. Rust, breakers, mismatched breakers, wrong size wires on a breaker. It's all safety concerns that you're going to document. Ungrounded wires. The old wires are have the cloth, so you want to be careful with that, to call it out and document it, and let your clients know what they got. And really, the only way you're going to be able to do that is by taking the cover off. As long as it's not a Federal Pacific panel or a Zinsco or an unsafe situation, then you wouldn't. But that's the only way you're going to find out these safety concerns. Replacing the dead front cover. You know, if you go to an inspection and you take out the screw with the point, we carry these screws with us. I'm not going to put that one back in, because if you go in and there's a wire there, you could hit it and short it out and get hurt. So just replace it. Definitely call it out in your report. We do. We mention that the panel covers are the wrong kind, and we put a picture in just like you see now. This is for illustration purposes, but on the inspection, we just did it yesterday. We took a panel cover off, and it had these pointed screws. I knew they were, you know, pointed, because we saw, as you saw in the other pictures, you know right away it's not a panel screw. So if that's the case, as you're proceeding, just be careful doing that. Confined spaces. Confined spaces is a term that pertains to many areas that inspectors evaluate, such as crawl spaces and attics. We were talking about that earlier with the attics and the crawl spaces and stuff like that. So the confined space are large enough, is large enough and is conformed that an employee, well, an inspector can bodily enter and perform assigned work, has limitations or restrictions, which means from entry or exit, tanks, vessels, things that there's only one way in and out. It is not designed for continuous employee. While confined spaces by themselves are not inherently unsafe, they can be under certain conditions. Permit requiring, you don't really see much of this on a residential inspection, but we see this a lot on our commercial inspections. You'll see these signs. You can't go in, you can't open up certain things. You'd have to get permission. But again, if you can't get into a space, document it. It can contain hazardous materials or might not be safe to enter for whatever reason. But again, you don't really see this in a house. This is more if you do commercial inspections. Let's see what we got here. Okay, attic inspections. We touched on that earlier. We'll get a little more in detail. You know, how you're going to access that opening. Can you get up there? You know, even if you can't get up and in, you could still stick your head up there. You know, take pictures from the opening. Again, document how you're inspecting that space. State the fact, you know, inspect it from the access hatch. And if it's unsafe to get in there, state the fact, but you do state how you're inspecting it and from where. Take some good pictures. You could see a lot by not actually entering the crawls, entering the attic, but doing it from the outside of the hatch. So again, it's got to be safe. Different kinds of ladders, how you get up there. These are just some attic terminology, which again, it's important to have the knowledge base that when you talk to your client, you can refer to these components, know what rafters are, know what collar ties are, strong backs. Again, this is all in the courses that you would take on InterNACHI towards your CPI certification. Again, accessing the ladder. This is an attic access from the outside. We'd have to put a ladder up and go up and take a peek in there from there. Again, state in your report how you're inspecting that space. Attic hazards. We mentioned earlier about going into different areas and surveying the situation. When you're up in the attic and you're looking around, you know that these are potential hazards you're going to come across. We touched on it lightly earlier. Unsafe wiring, the upper right hand picture, beehives, bottom right, broken gable vents where, you know, birds and animals are coming in and nesting. You're going to have nesting material. You're going to have all different kinds of stuff. You could see that screen is put up and you got insulation and all of that kind of stuff stuck in there. So when you go up there, just be aware of these things. And again, the picture with the loose fill insulation, you're not going to walk that attic. You have no idea where you're stepping. So take your picture, state the fact, make sure it's in your report, and move on. Sometimes the attics, that's the only space, the upper left-hand picture, you don't have a lot of space. So that's all you got to work with. So just make, you know, state the fact. Attic pull down ladders. Easier access when you pull this down and it's there, better than, you know, jumping on your ladder and setting it up. These are good. But again, you got to make sure this is safe for you and your client, especially when your client buys the house and they're going up and down the ladder. You don't want them to get hurt. You'll inspect that as part of your inspection, call it out, document it if it's a problem. So this is a nice way of getting up into the attic. These are some things we've been talking about. So top left picture, crawl space. Nothing you can do. You just got to take the picture and state the fact. Inaccessible, unsafe, etc. Certain parts of crawl spaces, it's blocked off. You can't get through. You got to feel comfortable with what you're doing. Same thing here on the right. That would be a crawl space hatch from the outside. We saw this bottom left picture earlier in the beginning of the presentation. You're in a crawl space or an attic. Look for these wires that are sticking out, sharp edges, and anything like that. insects, bees, wasps, protruding nails, ductwork, plumbing and pipes, electrical box wiring, inadequate lighting. That's important. If you are in a crawl space or an attic and they don't have adequate lighting, call that out. Low head clearance, small door access. Everybody knows what a crawl space is. It's the space between the lowest floor of the building and the ground. Remember that a confined space is any space that is large enough for a person to enter to perform tasks, has limited or restricted means of entry or exit, and is not designed or configured for continuous occupancy. So that's pretty obvious. Attics, crawl spaces, those type of things. Unseen hazards, metal ductwork and hidden areas. If an inspector reaches over the top of a section of metal ductwork, several things can happen. If you're in a crawl space, just like this previous picture, if you're in a crawl space and you're reaching over, you can't see certain things. There could be sharp nails protruding from here. You can have loose electrical wires back there. You can get cut. You can see this is one of the InterNACHI illustrations where the ductwork is, bent back and it's sharp. You want to be careful. Again, confined spaces. If you can't do it, just put it down as a limitation. But try your best to get as much information that you can and look for concerns. Picture on the right is the electrical panel. Obviously, we talked about that. Replacing and removing the cover results in a shock. You can burn. We talked about that. What can happen if you get flashback from that? Again, we said we're going to save the videos for later. Interesting. Obviously, this falls under safety. Hydroponic inspection, hydroponic system can pose a serious issues for fire hazards, especially when grow lights are used improperly. These places, they're just, growing things, plants, vegetables, all the other kind of stuff that we might be aware of. Ventilation is lacking, electrical connections are frayed, flammable materials. So if you ever come across an inspection like this, you really got to think about it and proceed with caution if you have to do it. Systems are prone to electrical hazards. High intensity discharge lights pose a risk of explosion. High levels of CO2 can be generated from toxic vegetation, carbon monoxide, tangled electrical cords. There's always water being used to grow the plants. You got water, you got electric. If it's not done right, it's a safety concern. You can see from this picture, you got lights, you got outlets, you got extension cords running through here. So yeah, you got some concerns there. Cannabis grow operations. Why should inspector care about grow ops? A foreclosed home for sale is an example that may not have anyone entered the premise for a while. I was going to save this for the end, but I guess we could talk about this a little bit now because we're talking about our safety. If you're a single inspector and you're going out to a location that potentially might have, illegal usage of the building in the past, sometimes you might come across some undesirable situations. So, my feeling is if your gut's telling you unsafe, it's unsafe. It probably is. You just go with your gut and, don't back yourself into a corner. Just kind of think it through. No inspection is worth, your safety. So what what I like to talk about is, if you're a single inspector and you're going out on inspection, um, let people know where you're going, what time you're going. Um, you can even, when you're out on the inspection, if you're out there by yourself, have a communication where you communicate with the other person that's not with you, like every 20-30 minutes. Shoot them a text with the thumbs up, good, whatever that time frame is you're comfortable with. And if the person on the other side doesn't get, a check-in from you as you're doing the inspection, they'll text you everything okay. Obviously you keep your phone accessible. If they try calling you, they can't get through. Hopefully you're not down the basement. Or if you're going down the basement, let that person know. Say, hey, I'm going down the basement. I might not be able to get signal down there, but that's that the basement is a lot could be going on. But stay in communication with somebody if you're going out there by yourself, especially if you're going to an area where there's not going to be anybody else there. If you're with an agent or your buyer or the homeowner's home, it's a little different. But sometimes you wind up going to places and you're there and other people aren't coming for a while. You're on the property by yourself. Something to think about. Kind of like a roadmap of what you're doing and checking in with somebody as you go along. Something to think about. Again, if it's a grow house, it's probably in a situation that's not the best. So an inspector's physical safety may be at risk if if you're perceived as an intruder, someone who is on the premises without legal owner's permission and possibly conducting illegal activities. You're not stepping into a good situation, so you really got to think about it and proceed with caution. Yeah, a lot of these places, they'll do illegal taps. They'll go out to the pole and just steal electric. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So you want to just be careful. Meth labs. Well, again, if you have to do this inspection, proceed with caution. If an inspector has been hired by an owner to inspect a home occupied by renters or squatters who are operating a meth lab, they find themselves in a dangerous or herself in a dangerous situation. For well-being, there should be not handled items. Yeah, you don't want to touch anything. Safety concerns for their clients. Yeah. Again, just evaluate the situation. It's not worth it if you're going to be in a situation like this where, I've personally never come across this in all my years. I would never get involved, me personally. But I guess there's areas of the country that's what they do. If anybody's ever inspected anything like this or has been involved, just drop it in the chat or the Q&A. If we have time later, we'll definitely talk about it. But yeah, use your discretion. Inspecting a house after an emergency, you want to you're not going to run out and start doing inspections on something like this. You would allow the emergency personnel to complete their work before returning to the property. Never approach or move down power lines. That's common sense. Contact utility company or law enforcement immediately. Check for broken tree branches, roof damage, and blocked gutters or drainage areas. This is after the event, the catastrophic event, that you might come across an inspection that you're doing a couple of days later that got damaged by the storm. So this is what you would look for these things. Document the visible damage from the ground and avoid unsafe areas during the inspection. recommend a full post-emergency inspection by qualified InterNACHI. That's us, home inspectors, for obvious structural damage, downed electrical lines, stuff like that. So you want to make sure that everything is secure. Before turning on the water and the gas service to the home, check individual appliances to make sure they are not damaged. Secure dispose of, right? You could have perishable foods that, people might not have gotten back to the house and stuff is not good. So we talked about going back through and checking in the aftermath of a storm or flood, check the basement, crawl space, and attic areas for moisture intrusion, as well as areas of window sills and exterior doors. Unchecked moisture can lead to mold. Those are things you want to look at. Let's see what's next. Post-flood guide, general tips before you enter the home. Yep, you can get a lot of information on that by going to any of those websites. Again, this is all part of the course material that we're working off of, that you can go to the InterNACHI website and get all this information from there. Expecting after an emergency. Okay, so we talked about this. If there's dogs on the property, you always want to make sure that they're secured. They could become distracting if you're inspecting, if you're going up a ladder, or you're getting on your hands and knees to look under a sink, or you don't want an animal around you. That potentially could be a problem. These are some slides of what to look for in a dog. If the first slide, aggressive dog, you'll kind of know these things just by looking at it. If you're not comfortable around dogs, just have them secured, put away. You want everybody to be safe. You don't want to have a situation. Also, when you're going in and out of the property, make sure the doors are closed behind you, gates. You don't want to be chasing someone's animal down the block. You could have these conversations with the agents prior to you showing up for the inspection. You can ask if there's dogs. If they are, please secure them. A lot of times we go on an inspection and there's a dog or multiple dogs. The seller will put them in a car and take them, away from the house while we're doing the inspection. It's better for us. We're not distracted while you're on the inspection. Okay. Yep. These are some of the things you might encounter on your inspection. Crawl spaces, attics, really any part of the house. You could be looking under or around stuff on the floors, but mostly you're going to see it in the crawl spaces, in the attics, areas that can potentially have these critters cruising around. Different kinds of spiders, what you should be concerned with. If it's unsafe, don't get in there. Any kind of insects that can bite you, especially if you have allergic reactions to these things, you gotta be careful. So that's one set of insects. Guess depending on the area you're doing your inspections, thank God up here in the Northeast where we are, we don't really come across anything. At least I haven't. Maybe if you're further upstate, you might, but down where we are, we don't really encounter snakes. We've seen them, the small garden snakes, nothing really detrimental, but folks that are doing inspections in the areas that are highlighted with different kinds. You'll know your area. You know what you're inspecting in and around your neck of the woods. So you'll be aware of those certain things. Snakes are, you got copperheads, rattlesnakes. Some are poisonous, some aren't. In certain areas where you got to be careful, that's why I always make sure you have the right clothing on. We talked about that in the very beginning. That's important. What to do in case of an injury. If God forbid you get hurt, assess the situation, get up slowly. If you're by yourself, you have to call 911. Hopefully, you have people around you. Again, that's why I always let people know where you're going, what you're doing. Going in the crawl space, you're going in the attic. Yeah, I'm getting on the ladder. I'm going here. Just kind of be aware of it, your surroundings, and let everybody know where you're at. If you're not injured, rest a while or regain your composure before climbing again. I don't know why you would if you fell. It's pretty gruesome injury with the skull. Here's a short video. Again, we got a ton of videos embedded in here. So I have a feeling we're going to get through the slides relatively quick, and then we can always double back and pick out the ones that we would feel is appropriate for what we're talking about tonight. Broken bones. Clearly, you don't want this to happen. Different kinds of breaks, cuts, bruises, abrasions. Everybody should have a first aid kit, at least in their car with them in case you get hurt. And even if you get cut, clean it, sterilize it, put a Band-Aid on it. Don't walk around with blood dripping out of your finger. You don't want that. It happens. Even just a little bit of cut, you don't want to leave blood on a wall. Just excuse yourself, go to the car and get your first aid kit, clean yourself up. If as long as it's not major, get back in there. Broken bones are one injury we can potentially happen. Electrical burns, obviously these are all the things you want to avoid by not putting a metal ladder next to an electrical line. Clearly, common sense. We talked about the ladder setup and safety, where you want to make sure there's no overhead lines or anything of that nature. You definitely don't want to deal with that. Puncture wounds. If you step on something or something goes through your hand, doesn't cause a lot of bleeding, but you want to clean it and disinfect it. Wear good safety shoes so you can hopefully avoid one of the pictures with a hole in your foot. I don't know what this second picture is on the upper right-hand side, but if you're going on an inspection with shoes like that, you shouldn't be doing inspections. Yeah, not a good thing. So sometimes you get what you deserve, but just be careful. I know the weather gets hot in places, and you go out with shorts to inspect. You're just kind of leaving your skin exposed. Just got to be careful. Got to be careful. Some things we never want to have to deal with, but God forbid there's a situation and there's some severe bleeding. Obviously, you're going to call 911 immediately. Have the injured person lay down with their legs elevated if possible. Wear gloves and remove visible dirt, but do not remove large or embedded objects. Apply direct pressure using a sterile bandage, clean cloth, or your hand if nothing else is available. Maintain pressure for at least 20 minutes. Do not lift a bandage to check the bleeding. Just kind of put it on there and leave it until the proper help comes. Immobilize the area once bleeding isn't stopped and seek professional help. Just don't panic. Do what you got to do to make that person safe. It's going back to animal bites. Pretty straightforward. Inspect safely, check before entering enclosed spaces. We talked about that. Safety around animals. Be prepared, wear gloves, long sleeves, shirts, boots. Stay alert, listen and look for signs of animals. I mean, a lot of common sense stuff. Listen, if you hear a dog barking in the backyard and being aggressive, obviously there's no reason to go back there. Or if you're at a house and the dog's barking its head off and growling at the window because he saw you and just looks aggressive, think about it. Don't get yourself into a situation where you can hurt yourself. Yep, that's how you prevent bites. A lot of times pets can be friendly, leaning up against you, petting them, and all of a sudden, for some reason, that's why they're animals. Things can happen. Just kind of do your job. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Cute little video, snake bites. Some poisonous varieties commonly found in the United States: rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, water moccasins, and coral snakes. Bee stings. You want to clean and disinfect the area. You could see if you can find the stinger, pull it out. Just see how you can, take it out. You don't want to leave it in there. Clean it up. If you're highly allergic to any of these things, maybe you should be carrying an EpiPen. God forbid you have a bad reaction, at least you can do that. Carry some medicines that'll help you, if you get irritated and stuff. But yeah, if you have severe allergic reactions to these things and you're going to be in the industry doing inspections, it's something that should be part of your tool bag. Minor cuts and scrapes, we kind of talked about that. Let's see. Minor cuts and scrapes. What I'm going to do now is actually go over and pull out a couple of videos, if that's okay, AJ.
In accessing roofs, the most important piece of equipment is your ladder. Most of the time, you'll be accessing the roof with your ladder, and I want to emphasize your ladder. Never use a ladder you find on site. You need to be familiar with the operation of the ladder you use and be sure that it's in good condition. Never use a damaged ladder. In a moment, we'll take a look at the different kinds of ladders and the situations in which they're used. But a few rules are true no matter what ladder you use. Read the label. You'll be looking first at the load capacity. Ladders are generally rated as follows. Type 1, industrial. These are heavy-duty ladders with a load capacity limit of 250 pounds. Type 2, commercial ladders, are medium-duty with a load capacity of not more than 225 pounds. Type 3, household ladders, are light-duty with a load capacity maximum of 200 pounds. Some companies offer ladders rated for more weight than Type 1. Specialty ladders are available which are rated for up to 375 pounds. As an inspector, your ladders are tools you'll use a lot. Low quality ladders may be less expensive, but they're not as sturdy, durable, and safe as high quality ladders. Always buy the best ladder you can afford. You'll be safer if you use ladders appropriate for each use. Extension ladders are better for accessing roofs. Step ladders are better for accessing attic hatches. The following safety rules apply to all types of ladders. Keep your ladders free of grease, oil, and other slip hazards. Never load a ladder beyond its labeled capacity. Never use metal ladders around exposed electrical wiring. Use ladders only for their designed purpose. For example, don't use a ladder as a scaffold plank. Make sure the ladder is stable before you climb it. Don't try to move a ladder while you're on it by rocking or bouncing it. Never use a ladder when you're under the influence of alcohol, on drugs or medication, or when you don't feel well. If you get sick, dizzy, or panicky while you're on a ladder, don't try to climb down in a hurry. Wait until you feel better, then climb down slowly and carefully. Standing a tall extension ladder when you're alone can be a challenge. We're going to go over the ways to properly stand an extension ladder. You'll choose a level, flat area and lay the ladder down completely closed with the base of the ladder against the building. You want to look for electrical wires overhead. Fiberglass ladders don't conduct electricity, but steel and aluminum do, so you don't want to come in contact with electrical wires. Starting from the top, go hand over hand to raise the ladder. Once it's stood, pull the base of the ladder back a distance equal to about 1/4 of the height. So if we have about 12 feet here, we'd be coming back about 3 feet from the point of support. So too steep of an angle will overload the side rails. Too shallow of an angle, and you risk going over backwards. Once the ladder is stood, it can be extended as high as necessary, but it should go at least 3 feet above the roof. If you're on a slippery surface, like smooth concrete or a wooden deck, you should either brace the base of the ladder or use a non-skid mat. And if you can't make it safe, don't climb the ladder. Don't set up a ladder in high winds. Don't set up a ladder in front of a door. And if you do, you need to make sure the door is locked, or you need to put a guard, someone to guard the door, or you can put a sign or a notice inside. You just need to make sure that somebody inside doesn't walk out, hit the ladder with the door, or walk into the ladder, and bad things happen. There are a few things to remember about climbing an extension ladder. The first being that you want to maintain a 3-point connection with the ladder at all times. That means you never take more than one hand or 1 foot off the ladder at a time. As you climb, you should be holding onto the rungs. That way, if you slip, you have a better chance of catching yourself than if you're holding onto the rails. So, a 3-point connection. When you reach the point of support, you want to tie off the ladder. Since there will be different conditions at different roof edges, different homes, you might need to carry a variety of bungees or anything else you can think of. You may need to be creative. You don't want to completely depend on the tie-off to keep the ladder from moving. From when you step off the roof onto the ladder, you want to be sure that you maintain a stable position. Don't depend on the bungee. You want to make sure that you don't step on any rung that extends above the surface of support. So you would not step there, surely not there. And that's about it. Now, come down the ladder, remove our tie off. And to take the ladder down, we just reverse the process. You want to watch behind you to make sure you don't trip over anything. And that's it. The extension ladder rests on shoes, which are the actual contact with the surface that you've got the ladder on. There are rubber pads on the bottom of these shoes to help with anti-skid. But if you are on soil, you can lift the ladder and the shoe swivels so that the sharp point called the spur can dig into the soil and help keep the ladder stable. Step ladders should be used as they were designed, open. This means that they're not a good choice for those needing to access roofs. Don't take a tall step ladder, close it, and lean it against the home to access the roof. Here are some other safety rules for step ladders. Never use a step ladder over 20 feet long. Always open step ladders completely and make sure the spreaders are locked open before you climb. The spreaders and top cap are both crucial to stability. Never substitute makeshift devices like wire or rope for spreaders. If the spreaders or cap are damaged, some manufacturers will send you replacement parts for free. That's happened to me. Don't stand higher than the second step from the top. Especially don't stand on the top cap or stand on the pail shelf or on the braces on the back side of the ladder. Don't straddle a ladder with your feet on both the front and back sides. And don't leave tools on top of ladders. A hammer falling from 6 or 8 feet above your head can put a dent in more than just your day. Articulating ladders come in a variety of configurations and are available in lengths up to 22 feet. They sometimes combine the features of a folding ladder with those of an extension ladder. The advantages are that they're typically more convenient to carry than a step or extension ladder. In their smallest configuration, they're usually less than 5 feet tall. They're also versatile. You can use most of them either as an open, straight, single-piece ladder or folded in the center to use as a step ladder. It's also possible to see the locking devices clearly, making it easier to ensure that they're locked into position. Telescoping ladders have side rail sections which slide into each other, so they open and close like a telescope. They're typically available in 12 and 17-foot models. The main advantage to telescoping ladders is the fact that they're very compact. When they're completely closed, they're only 2 or 3 feet tall, so they're easy to carry and store. The main disadvantage to telescoping ladders is that the sliding rail sections are held in place by locking pins that are not visible. This condition prevents you from confirming visually that all sections are locked into place. Occasionally, the locking pins fail to engage completely and disengage unexpectedly. When they fail, they tend to fail under a load, meaning while someone is on the ladder. Their design includes parts that experience a lot of friction. Over time, these parts can deteriorate, increasing the chances that the locking pins will fail to engage properly. These ladders are made of aluminum and will expand and contract with changes in temperature, potentially increasing the risk of locking pin failure. Generally speaking, because of the increased number of moving parts and locking mechanisms compared to other kinds of ladders, chances for failure are greater with telescoping ladders. They can be very handy, but it's especially important to maintain them well and get rid of them when they show signs of not working properly.
So that was a good video to watch after we spoke about a lot of the stuff on the ladder safety. But one thing I want to add, if you're ever walking a roof, you're going up on a roof and you put the ladder against the side of the building, when you go up and over the ladder, it's smart to go up the roof in line with the ladder. So hopefully you have somebody footing it. And God forbid you slip, you would slide down and fall into the ladder, as opposed to going off the roof. So you'll get banged up, but at least you might not fall off the roof. When we walk the roofs, we always, whoever's going on the roof, they'll go straight up from the ladder to the ridge and then walk the roof that way and come down the same way as you're coming down. Just kind of line yourself up with the ladder, make sure it's tied off, and proceed that way. I know AJ was mentioning about ride-alongs and stuff like that with, helping other inspectors out. I highly recommend if you're a new inspector in the field to definitely try to align yourself with a veteran inspector and try to gain some knowledge. There's a lot of people out there that don't mind sharing their knowledge, and taking you out and helping you and showing you the ropes with pretty much everything we're talking about. If you're new, it's tough when you go out for the first time by yourself and you have nobody to answer questions and stuff like that. So it's not a bad idea to see if you can connect with a veteran inspector or someone that knows, the process and has been doing it a while. That'll be helpful, going forward in your career. So like AJ was saying, put your information in there. If you want to help people out, share it. Definitely a good thing to do. If anybody has questions, feel free, because we can answer questions as we go along. If you find any questions that come up, AJ, and you want to throw them in, that's perfect. Let's see. I know there are a couple of other good videos. This is a short one with Ben, kind of reiterating everything we were talking about. So I'll play this one. It's not that long.
Home inspectors are required to inspect the roof covering materials from the ground level or the roof eaves. According to the InterNACHI Home Inspection Standards of Practice, the home inspector is not required to walk upon any roof surface, even if the roof is flat. It's dangerous to get up on a house roof. It's dangerous to inspect a roof. It's dangerous to climb a ladder. Don't use a ladder. Don't get up on a roof without getting properly trained in ladder safety procedures first. The most important thing to do as a home inspector is to come back home safely. Many home inspectors begin each home inspection by inspecting the roof first. Well, the roof inspection could start by observing the home from the street or at the end of the driveway. Look at the house roof in its entirety. Determine the type of roof covering. Is it asphalt shingle? Estimate the slope of the roof surfaces, and then check to see if the entire roof can be observed and inspected. Look for missing roof covering materials, cracked or damaged roof covering materials, or missing shingles, and look for indications that the roof was repaired or replaced in some sections. Regardless of the home inspector's observations, the home inspection report should recommend that the home buyer ask the homeowner about the roof's performance in the past and its actual age. The home inspector will not be able to determine the age of the roof or predict its life expectancy.
Okay, so, yep. These are a couple of the other videos that we were talking about earlier. This one here, they talk about the tie-offs, which if you're doing, that might be applicable, but this is a good, and again, these are all on the InterNACHI website with the courses.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites, and originally, the workers had no fall protection, which OSHA requires when working in residential construction at heights of 6 feet and above. Let's look again at the workers installing shingles. Now, they are both wearing personal fall arrest systems. Each system has a full body harness, a rope grab lifeline, and connectors. Snap hooks connect each worker's rope grab lifeline to secure roof anchors, which are located higher up on the roof. D-rings connect the worker's safety harnesses to their rope grab lifelines. As before, the worker reaches over to pick up a shingle, loses her balance, slips, and falls. But now, because she's wearing a fall arrest system, she only slips 2 feet and doesn't fall off the roof. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321.
This video is what we were talking about with the ladders by the electrical lines. So this might be
In the
interesting to
U.S.,
say.
hundreds of construction workers. Video will also show what employers you're about to see deal with deaths at construction. Put metal extension ladder to reach and caulk the third-story windows, while another worker was on the ground caulking windows. The ladder was extending the electrical current in the power lines to reach the worker. He died over, and caution, a fiberglass ladder is selected for use in this area. While the fiberglass ladder is heavier, it has non-conductive side rails, and 2 workers can safely handle it. As before, the worker climbs down the ladder to move to the second window. But this time, he calls over to his coworker to help move the ladder. The 2 workers first bring the extended section down and then carry the ladder horizontally toward the second window to prevent the ladder from hitting the overhead power lines. Now that you've seen how to perform this work safely, let's go over some important points to prevent these types of electrocutions at work sites. All workers need to be trained about the hazards. Maintain clearance from overhead power lines. Working too close can expose the worker to an electric arc that could result in burns, a shock, or electrocution, even if the worker does not contact the power line. In addition to maintaining clearance from overhead lines, use ladders with non-conductive side rails as an added safety precaution. Using ladders with non-conductive side rails is safer, but not a guarantee of protection from an energized power line. In addition, ladders are not rated for electrical safety. So it is important to always use safety precautions that maintain safe distances from overhead power lines. Inspect ladders before and after each use. Only use ladders that are clean, dry, and undamaged. For example, if a fiberglass ladder is not kept clean, dry, and in undamaged condition, it can conduct electricity. Don't carry or move extension ladders in the upright position. Get help moving ladders to keep control and prevent accidental contact with energized overhead power lines. If a ladder should accidentally hit an overhead power line, do not touch it. Quickly move away and call the electric utility company immediately. If appropriate clearance from an overhead power line cannot be met, contact the utility company to de-energize and ground the line, or request the utility company install insulation over the lines to protect workers. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use these protections on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact.
everybody should be familiar with how to, work with your personal protection equipment, respirators and stuff. We'll kind of click through this video real quick, but at least you get an idea how the masks should fit on your face, and the way you should do it to make sure it's done right if you're using this type of equipment.
The manufacturer also supplies instructions on correctly. This is a test agent or instrument check must be performed each time you put on a respirator to check that it has been donned correctly. Remember, always follow the respirator manufacturer's instructions for the specific respirator model that you are using. Here are some general instructions for properly donning and doffing and properly conducting a user seal check for the two most common types of respirators. Let's begin with general instructions for a disposable filtering facepiece respirator, which is often referred to as an N95 or a dust mask. Inspect the respirator, including the straps, for tears or damage. If you find any damage to the respirator, replace it. If your respirator comes out of its original container folded flat, open the folds fully, following the manufacturer's instructions. Both hands to mold the nose strip to conform to the shape of your nose by pushing inward while moving your fingertips down along both sides of the nosepiece. Next, conduct a user procedures. Now let's explore the general instructions for properly donning and doffing and properly conducting a user seal check for a half face piece elastomeric respirator, sometimes referred to as a half mask. Remember, these are just general instructions. You should always follow the manufacturer's instructions for the specific respirator model that you are using. To begin, inspect the respirator, including the straps, valves, and gaskets, for loose, missing, or damaged parts. If you find any damage to the respirator, proper fit has been achieved. If no leaks between the face and facepiece, a proper seal has been made. If you detect face seal air leakage, reposition the respirator on your face and readjust the straps, then recheck. If you cannot achieve a proper seal, you are not protected and should not enter a hazardous area. See your supervisor to determine what the problem may be. For additional information on respiratory protection in the workplace, consult this website.
Okay, so a couple of things that I made note of when we were talking about going out on inspections from the inspector's safety standpoint. We talked about communication with other people if you're going out by yourself, supporting the ladders, when someone's there, if you're by yourself, ask somebody to spot the ladder for you. If you're going into bad neighborhoods, you really want to think about that and keep open lines of communication. If something doesn't look right, don't get involved with it. There was another video that we had that was this one is if there's openings in the floors, you want to be careful not to have that exposed. Take a quick look at this one.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers.
Even though they're
die
talking
every year
about
while on the
workers,
job.
we're talking about what
Falls
openings.
are the number one cause of fatalities in construction.
This is really
while
construction
workers
stuff.
are on roofs. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and require protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about personal fall protection. After framing one section of a wall, the workers raised it and moved forward to put it into place. While moving forward, one of the workers stepped towards the unguarded stairwell to hold the side of the wall section. he fell down the unguarded stairwell opening. He fell 20 feet and landed on the concrete basement floor. He died from fatal head and internal injuries. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. Originally, the workers were nailing in the boards to frame a section of the new wall, and the stairwell was not protected by a guardrail. Now, the stairwell is protected by a guardrail as required by OSHA. As before, the workers are moving forward to install the completed wall section. This time, as the worker steps toward the stairwell, the guardrail stops him. He continues forward to place the frame section in place. Another way to protect workers is by putting a proper cover over the stairwell opening. The cover must be secure. As shown here, the worker steps onto the cover and continues to put the section in place. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
If they don't respond, check whether they're breathing normally. Open their airway by putting one hand on their forehead and gently tilting their head back. Lift the chin by placing 2 fingers on the point, taking care not to put any pressure on their neck, which could block their airway. Look for movement of their chest. Feel for breath on your cheek and listen for sounds of breathing for 10 seconds. If they are breathing, put them in the recovery position. First, put the arm closest to you at a right angle. Take their other arm and place the back of their hand against their cheek. Grab their far leg and pull it towards you. The body will roll over easily. Tilt their head back and lift their chin to make sure their airway is open, and check for normal breathing again. Finally, adjust their leg to ensure they are stable. The recovery position helps them to continue breathing as their airway remains open, and they will be stable and won't roll onto their back.
Talk about a lot of this. Signage. I guess we could talk about the pre-inspection agreement on safety, on making that happen. So assuming everybody gets a signed pre-inspection agreement when they're out in the field before they do an inspection. We talked about sending the SOPs out for the client to read it and know what you're doing ahead of time. The fact of communicating with people when you're out in the field, ladder safety. We talked about, what to do with that. The electric, we always talk about the electric as being a safety issue and concern, because you can create, a lot of problems can happen from having improper electric during an inspection. You want to make sure that the cover is on properly when you leave. Let's go back to the slides. Electric is a big safety concern. We talked about the glasses. We talked about the gloves. We talked about having rubber-soled boots. Checking with the electrical tester to make sure things aren't live. You could see he has gloves on when he's checking the panels. We talked about these screws. You got to make sure that the screws are not with the pointed style. You want the ones with the threads and no point on the end. Federal Pacific panels, Zinsco panels. We talked about those. Make sure you don't take the covers off. The breakers fall out. That's important. Whenever you're checking the electrical system, you want to make sure everything's grounded properly. You have the GFCIs in the proper area. Know where they should be located. That's important. GFCIs, you basically have them on all the exterior of the house, in the garage, anywhere near where there's a wet surface, kitchens, bathrooms, sinks. You want to make sure they function properly. A lot of times when we do an inspection, you'll trip a GFCI, you'll trip an outlet that doesn't have a GFCI reset button. So what happens is you have to go around looking for where that reset button is. And that's important to let your clients know, because if they're in the house and this trips and they don't know where it trips, you have to figure out where to reset it. A lot of times we see on new construction, they put all of the GFCI breakers in to protect the outlets throughout the house. And then the client has to go downstairs to the breaker and flip it and turn it back on. So when you're testing your outlets, listen, sometimes you'll hear a trip, and they're wired in weird places. So you want to make sure that when you're going through that part of the inspection, make sure that they function properly and where you can reset them. Like I said, sometimes you have to go down into the basement. Sometimes they're in another room. Bathrooms pretty much a lot of times are connected up and down. And the reset button is in the downstairs bathroom, and you have to go upstairs and reset it. If it trips upstairs, you have to go downstairs. So just a lot of things like that you should be aware of. Explain arc fault interrupters. Those are new. We see that on a lot of new construction for safety features on the arc faults, and the panel itself would hold the GFCI reset button on certain kitchens and stuff that you would want to reset as you're going through the inspections. It's good to understand where they reset.
Hey, Rob, we got a couple questions.
Sure.
A few questions now. Are there any safety concerns when inspecting a home with standby generator?
Safety concerns. What happens is with a standby generator, when you take the panel cover off, you're going to see how it's wired for that circuit. Now, some of them have automatic transfer switches where you don't have anything to do. Some of them you have to go through a process of shutting off the main breaker and turning on the breaker that's going to come from the generator. So there's a lot of different things. So if you're checking an auxiliary generator, you want to make sure it's wired properly, how it's going to transfer from the generator electricity versus the utility electricity, because you can never have them on at both at the same time. So you definitely want to, when you're checking that, see how the panel's wired and understand what circuits might only come on during that time, or sometimes it's a whole house generator, you don't have to worry. But you should know, usually there'll be a sub panel next to it, and they'll wire it where you put the generator on, it'll keep the refrigerator going, the lights, just make sure that's wired properly.
And can you tell me how to identify whether the home's electrical system uses copper wiring throughout, and if there are any visible signs of deterioration or outdated connections?
Okay, good question, being that we're talking about safety on the aluminum wires. Really, one of the ways you're going to know is by opening up the panel, and then when you go in there, you'll see the aluminum wiring, usually on the neutral. Sometimes you'll go in the panel and you'll see pigtails. But one of the big things is that knowing when the house was built from 1965 to 1975, they were using aluminum wiring. So if you're inspecting a house with that window from 65 to 75, definitely be on the alert. But when you look at the panel and you take it off, you'll see the aluminum branch circuit wiring in there. So what you would do is call it out and identify it, that have a licensed electrician look at it and potentially change those aluminum wires to copper wires. And if you're not sure, you can always take a cover off a switch or an outlet and look in there, just a cover plate, and then peek in behind. Sometimes you'll see it pigtailed. People go out of their way to hide aluminum wiring so we don't find it, because a lot of times it becomes problematic for the new buyer on aluminum wires. And I think the other part of the question was deteriorated wires. Yep. The only way you're going to do that is by taking the panel cover off, unless the wiring is going through the basement or somewhere where you can visibly see that wire. And if it's deteriorated through its run on the branch circuit, then you can see it that way. But the best way is by taking the panel cover off, and you'll be able to identify just by looking at it that it's not that plastic insulated wire.
During an inspection, do you observe any signs of oxidation, loose connections, or mixed copper aluminum terminations that could pose safety concern?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of our inspection from a safety standpoint. When we're doing that when you take the panel cover off, you'll see heavy oxidation. We just saw one today when we did our inspection. The main service wire coming in at the lugs was so heavily oxidated that you would see it. And outside, the service entrance cable was deteriorated, so you have an idea that water's coming in. So anytime you see that, always call it out, write it up. You'll have your comments on it. But when you take the panel cover off, these are visible things. If you look, these things will come out and jump out at you. Sometimes you'll see when you open up a panel, you'll have aluminum and copper wires. If you see those purple wire nuts, they're filled with dielectric gel, because you have two dissimilar metals that you want to have that gel around it and throughout the connection. But if you find, that's one of the big things when you're doing an inspection from a safety standpoint, outside of the environmental issues on the electric, is to look for those aluminum wires. It's important. Sometimes you'll go up in the attic and you'll see junction boxes up there where you'll see aluminum wiring going in. Well, you won't see the wiring, but you can read the sheathing on the wiring, and it'll tell you the type of wire, the material for the conductor, and you'll have an idea. You'll see this junction box with different wires going in and different wires coming out. They do that a lot. They'll drop new copper wires behind the wall, but they won't run it down to the panel, but they'll make that a splice box up top. So yeah, it's our job to look that out. And the only way you're going to find that is by taking the panel cover off.
Is the existing copper wiring consistent with current electrical code standards? And are there any areas where upgrades might be recommended for safety performance?
On the aluminum wires, a lot of the challenges with that is that if the insurance company sends somebody out, or they dig in, or they know that the house was built at a certain time, you might not be able to get insurance because of the aluminum wires, as well as, it's a safety concern, because a lot of times what happens is, the concern with the aluminum wires is that A, it's a softer metal, B, it's not as good a conductor as copper. And then a lot of times what happens is the expansion and contraction on these aluminum wires, they start backing themselves off the terminals where they're screwed down, and you'll wind up with a loose wire or a loose connection that arcs, and arcing, you can have fires. So those are the major concerns with the aluminum wires that are not such good conductors, and it's fact that it's a softer wire. A lot of times you'll do an inspection, you'll see aluminum wires, it's not going to the proper aluminum wire device that's rated. The device might only be rated for copper. Meanwhile, you have aluminum wires going to the device that's not designed to use aluminum wires. So you have to call that out. If you look at the labels on it, it'll have, can be used with aluminum and copper wires. So those are things that you look for when you take the panel cover off. It gives you a lot of information. That's why it's important to get that panel cover off.
All right. And William asks, I've seen tin coated copper wire that looks like aluminum. Any good to tell the difference? Is there any good way to tell the difference?
That's a great question. And what happens is, back in the day when they had the cloth wires, what they would do is they would dip the copper wire in tin. So it's called tinning the wire. So if you look at that wire, William, you can definitely make the mistake of saying it's aluminum wire versus copper. But the dead giveaway is going to be the fact that it's cloth on the outside. So if it's cloth on the outside, it's not going to be aluminum, it's going to be copper. The aluminum wires that were used had plastic insulation. So if you go to a panel and you take the cover off and you're not sure about if it's aluminum or copper, then if it has the cloth insulation on it, it's not. It's copper. It's aluminum. It's tinned. It's not even aluminum. It's dipped in the tin. They thought it would help with corrosion on the copper wires. So that's a really good question to understand when you take the panel off. Don't call out an aluminum wire if it's not, and you'll know because the panel will be older. But if it has that cloth material, then you know it's not aluminum. And it's funny because you can talk to 10 licensed electricians and 5 of them would tell you could do pigtails. And pigtailing is literally putting copper wires on the business end of an outlet, switch, or breaker, and then taking that branch circuit and connecting it to the aluminum wire, putting the dielectric gel with the wire nut on it, and then doing the same thing at the other end. Other licensed electricians will just tell you, change the wires, rewire the whole house. So, you flip a coin as to what needs to be done. But aluminum wires, if they used properly. Now, the other thing is, and this is a good point, you are going to find aluminum wires in the panel when you take it off on the heavier gauged wires, but they're stranded aluminum. It's not a single wire aluminum where the challenge is. They still use aluminum wires for the heavier gauged wires for like dryer connections, and even service entrance cables. They have to be oversized, they have to be one size up, but sometimes you'll see it if it's strand wire and it's wired and it's sized properly and it's on the business end of the receptacle or the breaker and it's approved, then it's okay. It's when you deal with that solid wire by itself that's not in a stranded cable. And again, going back to safety, Federal Pacific, Zinsco, all of those panels, be aware of that. And again, like you said earlier, AJ, if anybody wants to reach out, this is who we are, family-owned business, pretty straightforward. More importantly, if you folks scan this, it'll give you all my information, and feel free to reach out. Again, we're in the Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens area. If anybody has a question or something that needs help, feel free to reach out. We enjoy doing that, helping other folks out. Like AJ was saying earlier, the group chat, share information with people, help one another out. Pretty straightforward. So if you scan the QR code, that'll give you all of my information. By all means, feel free to reach out to us.